Because the worst thing I think you can do is kind of outsource your brain and outsource your thinking to generative AI platforms.
Welcome to Under the Banner. I'm your host, Ollie James. Today, I'm joined by Paul Evans, founder and chief positioning engineer at Version, the studio helping brands engineer positioning that's preferred by both humans and AI. He created the concept of positioning engineering and the 5D framework to make go-to-market strategy adaptive, defensible, and machine-readable. Before Version, Paul led billion-dollar media and GTM programs as global head of media at Vodafone, and earlier ran major brand mandates at Xbox EMEA, including the global launch of Kinect, recognised by Guinness as the fastest-selling consumer electronics device. Paul's experience is further strengthened by his time agency side at Mindshare China, to driving strategy, partnerships, and innovation at Nike, and then to Havas Media in Dubai, where he led the global relationships with Emirates Airlines. Paul, welcome to the show.
Very good to be here. Thanks a lot.
Well, let's just kick straight into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the journey that led you to be where you are now?
It's a long journey. I've just turned 50 this year, so I'm kind of reflecting a lot on 30 years in the business, and the business is quite kind of relatively broad, but the way I kind of summarize it is about 20 or so years as a client-side marketer, where through different roles and different opportunities, I kind of ended up leading media capabilities within big global clients. So moving up from InBev, so one of the big global brewers, into Kimberly-Clark, into Microsoft, and kind of founding and developing the media capability at Microsoft EMEA, and then latterly, with a little bit of a departure into agency side, when I went to China and Dubai, which were fantastic experiences, both in terms of like local market kind of cultural media experience and also agency side. And then my last kind of corporate role was at Vodafone as global head of media there. So managing about $1 billion worth of media spend across 20 markets and leading the operationalization of media. So that meant data ownership, technology platform ownership for the business and across those markets. It meant optimizing our planning processes. It meant in-housing for, to build our own talent and operating capabilities within search, social, programmatic, and so on like that. So that's kind of the first big chunk of my career. And then the latter kind of bit, which has been the last kind of 5 or 6 years, has been a move into fractional CMO work. I kind of wanted to get back to core marketing, problem solving for businesses. As you can imagine, in those global roles, you come a little bit more distant from getting your hands dirty to a certain extent. So doing the fractional CMO work in ad tech and media was great. And that was the last 5 years. And then starting Version, which is a positioning studio, data-driven, and really timed for this intelligence era, and everything that goes with AI as both an enabler of positioning work, but also in terms of positioning for humans and machines as well. So there's a lot kind of wrapped up in that initial introduction, which we can kind of pick into as you wish.
So what did you talked about your sort of big corporate background. So I wonder if there's anything you had to sort of unlearn in moving from that kind of big corporate space into founding a company like Version. And
yeah,
because those big corporate playbooks sometimes can be sort of counterproductive or can even hurt startups.
Yeah, they're very different. They're very, very different. It took a while to unwire that corporate mindset. And when you say corporate mindset, corporate isn't the right word. It's a kind of like stakeholder management, internal reporting, the political kind of side of it. You're kind of like, those are the things that are valuable within those roles. I mean, like maybe half of my work would be that, and then the other half would actually be the doing. And that was the real kind of tension point for me. I wasn't doing enough of the doing, where you're kind of really adding value and creating value for your customers. So my customers were like 20 local markets and the different teams that I work for there. But, when you spend so much of the time polishing, your argumentation to kind of sell through stakeholders up and down within the business. When you're managing meetings or briefings or so on like that, those aren't valuable within startups, where the value within startup scale ups is really about agility and kind of getting shit done. And that's what I've really, really enjoyed, actually. And as I say, it took me a while to kind of unwire myself. But what I've been able to strike is a balance then. And I kind of see that in my work now. I mean, it's 5 years on, right? So it's kind of taken me a little while. I can't really say like, was it 12 months, 24 months when it kind of tipped. But what you do get through learning and developing the way you do your work and your thought process is incredible rigor at the highest standards of capability in terms of professional capability. So let's say your media operations and strategy and planning and so on like that. You're exposed to the very edges of how the industry is operating. In fact, Vodafone is a great case in point of leading the industry in the way that we deployed in-housing for the benefit of our business. We were one of the first kind of big, Vodafone's a FTSE 100 business, 40, 50 billion, whatever it was, annual revenue. For a company of that scale to step into in-housing and the ownership of such programmatic operations was a huge thing. So, you do great things and you can deliver on the edge of the industry kind of thinking that is really kind of innovating and driving things forward. But taking that kind of rigor and discipline forward into the startup scale-up world, you're doing it in a faster way now. And you're doing it with more agility. I think it's one of those overused words. I was trying to think of something else. But I think it's pretty relevant.
You'd say that rigor was one of the, because I asked you about what you had to unlearn, and we covered that. And you think that rigor is the thing that you carried forward? Is there other things that you carried forward from that world rather than had to leave behind that have been particularly useful?
Yeah, I mean, logically, my experience and knowledge of the industry and the industry stakeholders, the makeup of the industry and how it works, I was exposed to that at quite great depth at Vodafone, which is fantastic. So then being able to kind of flip into operating as a fractional CMO within the industry, that vertical was clearly of incredible benefit. I think the network you can't undercall as well. It really helped for those 5 years. I'm not. I have like inbuilt and native imposter syndrome, right? So even though I think I was successful during that time, and I did work that my clients found incredibly valuable. They told me so. I was, lucky that for 5 years, I was referred in or word of mouth kind of inbound or my network inbound. I was like dark to a certain extent in terms of publicizing myself and my visibility on LinkedIn or through content marketing or kind of having, any kind of sort of outbound opinion, basically because I wanted to focus on doing and project work. And I was kind of really, really enjoying that. So I was kind of lucky to kind of, have that as retained value that I could take through into the fractional CMO work. So yeah, it's kind of, it's good. It's good. But I think, the biggest thing you want to unwire and unlearn is just kind of a focus on the right things, on really getting to the heart of problem solving really, really early on and really quickly in the way that you work with your clients. You don't need to do extensive statement of works as an example. People just want you to be really clear and sharp with an understanding of what it is you're trying to solve for them and how you're going to do it, and then just get on with it and create that value.
The SOW, the statement of work, I remember those from my sort of product
I still love them.
days.
I still do them. I'm pretty good.
Well, let's talk about your current project version. You coined positioning engineering. You're the chief positioning engineer, and you built version. And I just wonder whether you can give us sort of a brief overview of version, what it is, and why you started it.
Yeah. So there's a few things in terms of like bringing that all together. I guess After 5 years doing fractional CMO work, I had delivered a number of positioning projects. Not everybody called it positioning as a problem to solve. Kind of some people came to me with like growth issues, or like growth was plateauing, or confused market understanding, or the business was introducing a new product and they wanted to be able to take that to market in the right way. But ultimately, what kind of sits above that is positioning. And I really enjoyed the work. And I kind of found myself leaning back into 20 years of marketing experience and intuitively solving those problems. I then did a Mark Ritson mini MBA. For me, it was a refresh, right? For some people kind of going into marketing, it's like their first exposure to formal education. I found this stat the other day, only half of marketers actually have formal marketing qualifications, which is fucking insane, right? As a profession.
I thought that when I've had conversations with people about it. I did my master's in data-driven marketing, and I did business studies that had
Nice.
sort of elements in it. So I agree that this is something that marketers, in order for you to claim yourself as a marketer, you should have some sort of formal qualification. I mean, you wouldn't hire a lawyer without a degree
100%.
in his subject that was sat at the bar, etc. So I think
There's a whole conversation on the quality and state of marketing right now. But so going back to the Mark Ritson course, it was great as a
sure.
refresh. And I saw positioning kind of literally squarely in the middle of a sequential marketing strategy, or a set of marketing strategy capabilities, exactly where it should be. And I saw something which was critical as a catalyzing point for business strategy and ahead of going to market. And I saw something also which is really interesting. I saw a capability in the way that Mark presented it that was 40 years old when the original book on positioning came out by Riesentraut, and it hadn't evolved. It was still talking about the right things that, come from positioning, which is the ability to drive preference in the minds of your customers. And that's still the truth now. So differentiation is still something that I drive through my own work. I just felt it kind of hadn't moved beyond that. It hadn't recognized what really positioning needs to do and the critical role that it plays within business strategy. So hence, I kind of started thinking about positioning in a more fluid way. So think of it more as software, hence, and more data driven in that respect as well. So bringing those two things together led me to positioning engineering as a new definition and a new approach of what constitutes kind of, positioning in the intelligence era that I kind of talk about, right? Which is this, it coincides with the emergence of LLMs, I guess, and AI, both as an enabler of the way you can develop positioning, but also as a recipient of the output of positioning. So I also talk to positioning for humans and machines being equally as important now, with AI interfaces becoming more and more of an important point in decisioning, actually the point of decision for a lot of people. So it's not your website anymore. It's not your pitch deck. Sometimes, very often, the decisions are being made even before being exposed to those resources, because LLMs are able to do that hard work for customers now. And so being able to be present within LLMs, I see as a positioning task, and not exclusively. There are other tactics you need to deploy to be able to optimize your visibility, which we can talk about. This new kind of concept called GEO. It's not a replacement for SEO, but I see them kind of running alongside each other. They do different things. So this kind of new definition of positioning that I've developed then kind of brings a whole load of things together. Yeah, it builds off value differentiation, but we have a 5D framework to kind of reflect the multiple dimensions that I think positioning needs to bring to the table now. So you need assets that are also distinctive. You need your work to drive and direct your go-to-market strategy. You need it to align teams on that same basis. You need it to be discoverable by LLMs, as we've just talked about, and then you need it to be dynamic as well. And in that sense, so much expectation on positioning is that it's like a one and done exercise, but built into Version's kind of operating model is the idea that we work with the client, yes, on a first time basis, on a project basis, but then we maintain that relationship ongoing so that we're versioning the client's positioning in response to changing market dynamics. So a new competitor launch, market legislation that changes and evolves, internal capabilities that change. So for example, a new feature that might kind of, change the game in terms of the value that they create. All of those things require that your positioning evolves over time and is adaptive over time. So positioning engineering is shorthand for both a new approach and a new set of outputs and deliverables.
Brilliant. So quickly, the five.
Yeah, so here we go. It's always a test for me to actually kind of like bring them back.
I think I got 3 from what you said a second ago, but I'm not quite sure. I was picking
Here we
out
go.
every D.
You're ready. You're ready. Okay, so stand by. So differentiation or differentiated value, that your assets are distinctive, that you are discoverable, that your positioning needs to be discoverable within particularly LLM environments, that your positioning provides direction to your business, so your go-to-market strategy and aligns your teams, and then finally dynamic, in a sense of kind of versioning over time and adaptive over time. 5 Ds.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Go through that.
I think this idea about this GEO being different from SEO and how you need to show up in the with an LLM versus a website. Can we talk? I'm not an expert on this, so I'm interested in exactly how GEO is different from SEO. Can you give us a kind of a layman's view? And why it matters for brands who want to be named by models, and even what does being named by models, what does that mean? And can you just take us through that in a bit more detail? Because it's completely new to me.
No, it's cool. And I'm not going to pretend to be an SEO expert in any capacity at all. So I'll talk to GEO and kind of present kind of why I think that's different. And as I kind of, there's some really great people on LinkedIn at the moment kind of talking about this topic. A guy called Andrew Holland, as one example, is, a really great reference point who has more expertise than me. And as mentioned, I think positioning is a key component of the GEO solution alongside other kind of techniques like, digital PR. So let's kind of like dig into that a little bit. So more and more buyers, and, I work predominantly within B2B, and there's a statistic that says something like 90%, or the trajectory is that 90% of B2B buyers are forming definitive opinions and therefore decisions on companies via AI, and at that and at that or through that as a point of kind of analysis or problem solving. So if you've got I where am I at the moment? I might be looking to kind of start a podcast as well, as an example, right? So cool. So I might be querying an AI platform to ask about the market leading podcast production services that work for a small solopreneur. So you can get the great thing is you can get incredibly specific. And that then returns and does all the hard work on research, but also it's not, giving you like 10 blue links like you used to with search. This is giving you context. It's giving you recommendation and credible evidence to support those recommendations. It's giving you authoritative clues and kind of evidence that you help you in your kind of decisioning as a user on that basis. So if you kind of work back from that, GEO then is getting to how are you as a brand going to be cited as the first or one of a small set of recommended solutions in regard to a specific question. And a specific question typically is a problem to solve in terms of that asking dynamic. And so the way that we're kind of looking at that from a positioning perspective would be, and the reason why I think positioning drives great GEO is that if you're going to get cited, you want to be cited for the right reasons and be cited in the right context. So what positioning offers you is very clear specificity on the problem that you solve, the urgent problem that you solve, and the value that you create and the solution that you bring to evidence that value creation. That as positioning assets then drive all of your go-to-market work, and all of your go-to-market work in the various kind of touch points that exist, but particularly digital PR is where you're going to get surfaced and when you're going to get cited by LLMs. So this is kind of quite a long-winded explanation, but you get to the point about citation and where LLMs they tend to be kind of finding answers to questions, and it's places like Wikipedia and Reddit. It's
Yeah.
trusted review sites and authority points that the LLM recognizes exactly that. So it's not going to your company website anymore, or largely at the very least. It's looking outside of that. Yeah, go on.
So on a practical level, then you make your positioning machine readable so that LLMs can name you by pushing content through to platforms like Reddit and Wikipedia rather than your website. Is that
Yeah. Yeah,
fair to
I think
say?
it's not going back to kind of like it's SEO and GEO. So search is still scaled and critical, isn't it? Right? You can't turn off search platforms in that way. Google still dominates. So you still need to be surfaced or drive surfacing within your website, as an example, or through other points where your content will be shared. Let's say, LinkedIn, social media, and content creation there. But it's more important. Well, it's important now to recognize the prevalence and incidence of LLM citation and recommendation and how that's being derived. And so, yeah, that's the digital PR point. So it's kind of like in combination, you've got positioning that sets the correct context and framing for your business through very specific language and direction that then needs to be driven through and activated within your GTM and needs to be surfaced within those places where LLMs are going to look. So you need this combination of positioning as strategy and a bridge through to execution, which it drives and directs. And then you need to execute really hard. And that's kind of the answer, which I think kind of completes GEO, is kind of being able to take those well-structured, context-rich, syntax-efficient narratives and content and have that surfaced in the right places.
And can you, when we talk about GTM and AI, in terms of actually using AI, like a sort of a generative AI or agentic AI platform, where does it, can you use that? Does that genuinely help the positioning work with things like your taxonomy or message maps, etc.? Or,
Yeah,
what's your, do you want to keep it human led? And what's your kind of, is there a sniff test for kind of, you talk about this AI washing where you get
yeah.
presented with something you can clearly see has just been over engineered or over prompted? What's your kind of
Yeah,
view on that as an
it's a
approach?
good question. You're kind of hitting on some really big things there for society and for individuals kind of using generative AI. Because the worst thing I think you can do is kind of outsource your brain and outsource your thinking to generative AI platforms. So I've been really clear as I've sought to enable my work through AI that it's an enrichment exercise, that I'm in control. And so to your point, right, at the moment, my business model is a kind of like very clear human in the loop, right? And I found no matter how sophisticated the prompting, the prompt engineering that I develop within the context of my work and my framework and my processes and so on like that, I still have to kind of retain control and I still have to direct and find those, connect the dot kind of opportunities for clients where there's, for example, a point in my process where we're synthesizing all of the auditing work that we do on a client situation, competitive set, customer pain points, perceptions on the client capabilities and so on like that. And there's a point in the middle before you get to developing your positioning assets, which we call positioning key. And that point of strategic kind of synthesis, I've not yet been able to replicate here into Gen AI. It can help, and it really does help. But I found Gen AI to be great as a sparring partner very early on, and is still the case now.
Mm.
And equally, it's important to validate your Gen AI responses as well, and to push it. So as a kind of equitable, and I love Newton's third law, the kind of like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. it's the same in sparring with Gen AI. So you go in hard and you validate hard, or you push it hard on the basis of your own knowledge and expertise and processes, and you typically get back what you need from that, and that it's gone through that same kind of exacting kind of expectations and processes. But
Yeah.
it was, as I kind of mentioned about version, and timing is everything with kind of, building businesses, I think. And it just so happened that me kind of realizing that positioning could be more than what it's been defined previously, it coincided with this point of Gen AI being available and meaningful in the way that it could be deployed and used. And I've kind of I've taken that on board, and it's been transformational in the way that I've been able to interrogate and audit as part of my, the processes
Yeah.
that I apply to make this work more data driven than it's ever been before, to have that on a dynamic and adaptive basis ongoing, as an example, to use techniques like synthetic research where you're modeling customer um, personas and profiles, but you're doing that at scale. Like in the old world of my fractional CMO work, I might, for clients, undertake 10, 15, 20. If you can imagine, each of those is like an hour long conversation. Now I can model and validate the accuracy of those synthetic personas um, at a scale of significance across multiple markets, across multiple ICPs, uh,
Mhm.
and I can bring real insights to the table. I mean, I'm just completing a project right now for a digital out of home business, and we got to a universal truth or a universal problem to be solved through those techniques that the client had never kind of realized, and we only got there through those processes and techniques that we applied using AI. It was kind of great.
I really love this like concept of sparring. I've never heard it sort of
Yeah.
phrased like that, but it's exactly what you do, isn't it?
Do you know,
It's a great analogy.
it really is when you're a solopreneur. And I fucking hate that word actually, but like so more realistically, when you're own and you're in, on your own in this office, having a co-founder, in effect, it's either the cockapoo that I've got, my 3.5-year-old cockapoo, or it's Google AI Studio. And being able to kind of work with Google AI Studio and kind of spar through the development of, I don't know, like, the definition of the positioning key, as an example, is a kind of new bit of IP that I've brought into my business. I was able to kind of conceive of that myself, but then actually work and evolve the definition using AI capabilities. It's great.
Fab. Okay, cool. Let's zoom out a little bit. We talked a lot about your sort of your career and I love that deep dive into AI, not only in how we can show up within the models, but how we then use it with our go to market. I can see. Let's talk a little bit about your accolades. You're an industry veteran, and I can see a bit of an endurance sportsman.
Yeah.
Climbed Kilimanjaro, cycled London to Paris, boxed at Media Fight Night, 6 marathons, Guinness World Record holder. I just wondered let's zoom out, first pulled you into those extreme challenges. And, was there like a single moment that flipped the switch? Did you just get up and decide, right, I'm going to have at this mountain or road or
It's
ring?
interesting. I've never been asked this question. Clearly, there's something about I'm compensating for something. It's like buying a Porsche. I think I've always been naturally competitive and always wanted to push myself. And I think, like, in this sense of building version is me saying to myself, I got unfinished business. I really want to create something, and something that's better and different for the world. And equally, I think with the different challenges I've done, it's enabled me to kind of push my limits on physical endurance, or and competing against myself or competing against the clock. But also, nearly all of those endeavors have been charitable as well, and have enabled me to fundraise. So my kid is he's 11 now, diagnosed autistic at 3, and I wanted to give back to one of those charities. So I've raised money for Ambitious About Autism on a number of occasions now. The Guinness World Record run was fun. That was so. still the holder, which I can't quite believe actually, because I really thought somebody was going to steal this off me, because it wasn't a fantastic time. But it was the world's fastest marathon dressed as a knight. So I ran the London Marathon in 2023, I think, from memory. I'm actually in the Guinness World Record book as well. There's a little image of me, which is kind of quite cool. So I ran the whole thing wearing knee-high leather boots, carrying a sword and shield, and obviously and a kind of like St George's Knight kind of tunic and stuff like that. It was really hard.
I will see. I will search and see if I can find an image of that and put it
Please
up
do.
for
I've
viewers.
worked incredibly hard to expunge those images from the internet, but I think they're still there, unfortunately.
Which there's a big list there. I was wondering which of those achievements felt the hardest and
Oh,
why.
easily Media Fight Night. So if anybody's
Right.
aware of
Okay.
Media Fight Night, I mean, it's an incredible. It's in its 10th year this year. So in a few, I think it's November in Battersea. So if you guys can, anybody go along and buy a ticket and support the charities that they raise for. Tend to be kind of different every year, I think, but largely mental health charities. Um, is the hardest 9 or so months, 9, 10 months, I think, of my life. I've never been, and you kind of said a few of the things I've done. I've never been that fit before, but also
Really?
incredible. So starting from, so I got suggested, I'd done the couple of marathons in 23 and I got to January in 24 and I was talking to somebody about wanting to do a new challenge. And this guy, a guy called Andy Power, who has his own ESG data business in the industry, he was like, I know what you can do. Here was my fight from 2019. Look at that. It's great. Go do it. And so, not knowing anything about boxing, I'd never watched any boxing. I'd never been in a boxing gym. I really didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I went into the gym. I remember very clearly speaking to John Maloney and Ashley, the trainers there, and saying, "Yeah, I did a couple of marathons last year. This will be fine. I'll be fine."
Yeah.
And then they put you through the paces. Basically, it's about 100 people start in January, February time, and by the time you get to July, August, they're whittling down and trying to pair off and match you. And it's a great process in a sense of they're matching you. They're trying to find a match where you're same weight, height, age, and like boxing capability as well. Because it's not about white collar boxing has a bad rep where it's really about knocking the shit out of the other person. This isn't that. And you've been to the event, so you know. It's about the journey, the training journey. It's about earning the right to be in the ring and being one of those 16 that are selected for the night. It's about raising money for charity. It's about a brilliant night out for the industry to kind of like celebrate their peers as well. And it was all of that. It was quite incredible. So, there was the physicality side of it, but then there's like mental tenacity. I remember getting punched properly for the first time by a guy called Wayne Menser. He's like up there. He works at Timeout, and really feeling it and wondering whether is this what I want to do for another 6 months, or do I want to kind
Yeah.
of quit now? It's about learning the craft as well. It's an incredibly technical sport. Overall, it's absolutely brilliant. And the 15 other fighters, including the guy that I fought as well, Lee Yoxall from PhD, absolutely amazing. I feel so privileged to have gone through the process and have fought with those 16, 15 other people. It's a brilliant year. But to answer your
That's
question,
amazing.
it was fucking hard.
Yeah. Who'd have thought that Media Fight Night would have been harder than climbing Killy? I mean, that's quite something.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the selection process either, that they whittled it down. I'm so ignorant of these things. And that they
No.
whittled it down from 100 into this final 16. You didn't just
Yeah.
sign up, and that must have been really hard for the people that got dropped really close, as they moved right through 3/4 of the way through the process, almost like
No.
X Factor kind of style. That they press the button and go,
Yeah,
you're
it was a
out. That
trapdoor
must
that
have been
falls.
really hard. Yeah.
Testament to that, there's a guy, Shanil Chande, who's the chief programmatic officer at Talon, who trained with me all of last year and then has gone back this year. So he didn't make it through to that kind of final selection, but he's gone back gone back this year and has made it through. And so, exactly that. He trained all the way through, and he was there like sparring with us all the way to the end. So, I think people like that who show that commitment and that character, they've earned their right to be in the room.
Yeah, that's fact. Well, best of luck to him. I look forward to seeing him on the night. I will be buying my ticket. Let's talk about, we've dug into some of your sort of sports side of things. You've got some industry awards though. Campaign 40 over 40 winner, and you've just been nominated for this year's Ad Tech Personality of the Year. So congratulations on that nomination.
Yeah.
What impact do you think your peers recognised in you this year? How come you got the vote?
That's a good question, because I wouldn't say it's a funny award title, because I really don't think I have much of a personality, but I have a commitment and a conviction for how this industry, this wonderful kind of ad tech and media industry, can be better. And I always have done, through all of the work when I was client side and through then the fractional CMO work and the positioning work I do now. I bring a sense of, I guess, principles and ambition to that work. Vodafone's a great example. So establishing the media function there was set up against three operating pillars: independence, ownership, and transparency, which were there to benefit Vodafone as the business and the way that it would develop its media function and work with partners and so on like that. But it was also there as an expression of how the industry should operate and, create a value exchange amongst the, and within the ecosystem. And you've only got to look at like Google, and it's just been called out, legally defined as a monopolist with incredibly bad evidenced behaviors. And based on, at least it's kind of in two parts, the Google story, isn't it? Because in the search side of things, it's been kind of let off, really, not with any kind of form of punishment. And we're going to wait and see what happens with the ad tech part of it. But you kind of think that's just not right. This industry in the open web suffers because of opaque, black box, misincentivized organizations like Google and Meta. And we should be championing the values of the open web with trusted, authoritative journalism and content that is interesting in a sense of, it's valuable. It's not just like 5-second short clips. It can be, specialized, fascinating content that's kind of put out there that needs to be discovered and needs to be paid for as well through the value exchange of advertising. So, I think the industry's kind of got a bit of an imbalance, and it has done for years, the 20 or so years that Google's been around or programmatic's been around and so on like that.
And you think using that, you think that imbalance, is that the main sort of change that you'd like to use this nomination, that sort of the platform that it gives you in order to take through? Is that your sort of banner?
No, it's not as though I'm not a politician. I'm not standing for anything particularly.
Sure.
I would say I have worked my arse off kind of for the industry in a way that I want. I've tried to enrich and make the industry better through, tangible things like contributing to frameworks at the WFA or ISBA, and through other kind of aspects like advocating for diversity and inclusion, particularly neurodiversity. I undertook a course, Cambridge University module, like an MBA module on sustainability, so that I could bring that into my work and make sure that value is being brought into businesses where it's relevant and the right thing to do. And it's the right thing for the industry. So, I don't think I bring a personality to the industry per se, but I hope I kind of have left it, or I'm leaving it in a better place than where I found it 20 years ago.
Great. I mean, well, it's clear the industry disagrees because the nomination is there, and I'm sure there are many more to come.
Sure.
Okay, so we can I think wrap this up now. I've got a question I'd like to ask all my guests at the end.
Okay.
I know you're not a politician. I know that you don't know how to stand. stand under anything, but if you did have the attention of the entire world for 30 seconds, what is it you would say?
God, that's a really good one, and I should have prepped for this. I'm gonna say, do the right thing. I think intuitively, we as an industry know what that right thing is in the way that we behave, in the way that we create value, in the way that we should respect each other's interest within this wonderful kind of, messed up data driven ecosystem that we kind of, that we call home. And we want it to be there in another 10 years or another 20 years, right? And to do that, we need to, make sure that we're doing the right thing for, I think, each other. That sounds very like a tree hugging, but it's
No, I
not
love
meant
it.
it's not meant to be.
It's
It's
from
meant
the
to
heart.
be. I think they're really easy principles to adopt and to have as a North Star. And if you can kind of bring that to your, when you turn up every day, if you can kind of bring that as a lens, as a filter on your work, then I think, we're all in a good place.
Fabulous. I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up and end. It just ends for me just say thank you, Paul, very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure is mine. Hopefully the audience as well. But no, it's been great. Thank you.